Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Megan Billingsley with Restaurant Dive's Brand Studio, and I will be the moderator for today's webcast. Thank you for joining us today. Let me start by recognizing that we are in the most challenging of times. While there's no question that restaurants are feeling the sting of the economic pullback, there is certainly reason for optimism in this sector because of the opportunities to continue to offer key services, including order for pickup to an appreciative public. With order for pickup or delivery with contactless ordering essentially the only restaurant options for consumers today, COVID-19 will clearly have a significant impact on the industry, both now and in the long run, and we look forward to talking more about it over the next hour. But before we begin, we want to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button located in the top right-hand corner of your presentation window. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button in the top right-hand corner of your presentation window. We encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget. We'll try to answer your questions during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Please know we do capture all questions. After the presentation, you can access the on-demand recording of the webinar using the same link from today's live event. I'd now like to introduce you to our speakers. First, we'd like to welcome Jaron Waldman, CEO and co-founder of Rakuten Ready, formerly known as Curbside. Now part of Rakuten, the third largest e-commerce company in the world. Before Rakuten Ready, Jaron founded PlaySpace, which was acquired by Apple, where he spent 4 years developing location-based services across the Apple ecosystem. Rakuten Ready is based in Silicon Valley. And Alan Hickok, Senior Advisor for the Boston Consulting Group and the North American leader in restaurant strategy consulting. An accomplished restaurant industry professional, Alan has 30 years of experience in the restaurant and consumer sectors, having held a wide variety of positions, including CEO, board member, advisor, investment banker, and equity research analyst. Welcome, Jaron and Alan, and thanks for your time today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello, everyone. Alan here. Thank you for having me.
While consumers' appetite for on-demand services has been accelerating, today it is no longer a preference. It's become a necessity in our rapidly changing world. While the impact of COVID-19 is felt everywhere, it is particularly acute in the restaurant segment, where customers have no choice but to order their food on demand, and restaurants are scrambling to keep up and keep afloat while minimizing risk, especially when customers are demanding a contactless experience. Order for pickup has become the dominant revenue channel for many operators today, and we believe they will find that the shift to this channel could become permanent and over the long term end up having a positive impact on their business. The key is focusing on important customer touchpoints, including offering contactless options, prioritizing safety and cleanliness, technology innovation, and continuing to provide a positive, timely experience. Today, we are going to be walking through research from Rakuten Ready that highlights the importance of prioritizing order for pickup and contactless to meet customers' expectations now and in the future. In this webinar, you will learn how mobile order for pickup can help grow your business, why contactless is vital and how to incorporate it into your experience, valuable best practices to optimize the order for pickup experience. Okay, let's first just take a few minutes to talk about where we are today. Alan, would you like to get us started?
Sure. Thank you, Megan. Well, as everybody knows, the world changed very, very quickly and dramatically, and consumers' expectations have changed along with it. And as Megan mentioned before, I have over 30 years of experience, mostly on the capital market side of the restaurant industry. And I've been through already now a number of economic changes, beginning when I first started in investment banking. We had the crash of 1987. We had the recession in In the early 90s, we had 9/11, we had the Great Recession, in 2007, 2008, 2009. We have had a number of other issues in the restaurant industry, mostly around hygiene. And then, of course, now we have this virus, which has, basically shut the industry down other than drive-through and pickup. And so, but what I would say is, when I think back about these other, shocks to the industry, consumers do adapt and operators adapt, but it's going to be very, very different going forward. And it really underscores the importance of pickup through the restaurant operation. So for those chains or independents who reopen the dine-in, just to start right there, although that's not the focus of this call, there will be significant modifications to operation and policies and procedures. Now, many of these are physical. They're not just procedural. And the focus on hygiene and sanitation will be front and center in ways we have never considered before. And as an example, for the dine-in business, operators are going to have to reimagine how you approach this. And it starts before you open the front door. So for example, what are your queuing protocols going to be now that we require social distancing? And I'm not suggesting that we're going to have lines out the door, but you're going to have to think about queuing protocols. You're going to have to think, and that might be outside the restaurants. You're going to think about your lobby with 6 feet of separation. The average restaurant lobby can only accommodate, a handful of people, like 2 or 3. So queuing protocols up front, the role of the lobby, dining room. You are not going to be reopening these restaurants with a full complement of tables. You may only have half the tables in, making that number up, but because we're going to have room in between the tables. We're not going back to, full dining rooms anytime soon. And then those same types of physical considerations bleed over into the bar areas in the back of the house as well. So that's the dine-in piece and the piece that operators are going to wrestle through, and just how to accommodate that given consumers' expectations. And on the consumer expectation portion of this, I think it's important to note that we don't really know exactly what the consumers are going to demand from us. So there's going to be a lot of trial and error and monitor and adapt as we ease back, we meaning operators, ease back into dine-in business, and as consumers tiptoe back as well. But one thing that's not going to change is that consumers are going to be just as concerned about a great quality restaurant meal experience as they were before. But they also want to feel safe, and they will continue to order from the brands that they trust. And I think that as more chains are putting more muscle behind the off-premise dining channel, and especially pickup versus delivery, I think that contactless ordering is going to be a critical variable in the consumer response to your brand.
Yeah, I completely agree, Alan. And I think, what's interesting is we've been witnessing this multi-year trend where digital ordering for pickup has been growing really, really quickly. It is growing faster, actually, than delivery as a percentage of all orders that are placed. But we're now suddenly finding ourselves in a world where this order for pickup capability is something that's absolutely essential to a lot of restaurants in order to keep them afloat during this time, because dine-in is temporarily not an option. And so this shift, this event is essentially an acceleration of something that was already happening. And it's going to be really interesting to see how things shake out when we come out on the other side of this, and we will. But we see what we see right now is that contactless pickup combined with mobile ordering technology is something that it is a core plank that a lot of brands are rushing to put in place.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jaron. The consumer expectations are hard to measure right now, and any kind of consumer research that may have been conducted in the past, you can basically toss that in the garbage because it doesn't measure and it doesn't represent the way consumers are thinking about these dining occasions, and quite frankly, the consumers themselves aren't even sure how they're going to behave or at what rate they recapture their away from home meals. But one thing is for sure that we can depend on is that making that experience contactless, safe, easy, and timely is tough in the best of times. So restaurants will make sure they put a lot of focus and effort and muscle on reducing the purchasing friction while keeping that focus on safety and sanitation front and center in ways we have never really had to consider before.
Let's talk for a second about where delivery fits in. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so we, even before the crisis, saw a big risk to restaurants who had been relying on-demand delivery as a key channel for growth. So, dine-in was relatively flat. Mobile ordering for takeout was growing very, very quickly from a smaller base, and on-demand delivery was representing a big chunk of the growth that we've seen in the industry over the last couple of years. But it's a difficult situation where you have a number of stakeholders, including investors who've piled billions of dollars into building out the consumer audience that the aggregators have pulled together. Your DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, and Postmates, who control sort of 98% of the on-demand market right now. And none of them are making money on the on-demand delivery, but they're grabbing market share very quickly. And consumers, as you would expect, are responding by taking advantage of a subsidized product where delivery can be very convenient on a lot of days for a lot of people. And if the cost is artificially low, consumers will take that all day long. But aggregators are able to extract fairly large margins, very large margins from restaurants, especially from the smaller players. And then you have this whole new class of, we think millions of on-demand delivery workers right now who are in the picture and often find themselves squeezed for tips and under difficult conditions. And fundamentally, the issue is the economics, there's not enough to go around. Investors in a situation like we're seeing now, with reduced liquidity, are looking to figure out how they get a return on those billions of dollars that they plowed into the industry. And the aggregators are in a tough position because restaurants are already paying as much margin as they can possibly pay. And what you start to see is a reduction in the quality of service to consumers because you'll wait longer for your food, or your food will be colder because there are simply, it takes too much time to get that food to your door. And that's ultimately a result of the situation where you've got sort of 5 different stakeholders pulling in different directions on the economics with not enough to go around. And so our concern with all of this is that we could witness a situation where the economics, the sort of fault lines in the economic model start to show up, and the restaurants and the kinds of restaurants that we work with at Rakuten Ready see issues where that growth goes away, and a lot of that demand disappears in this kind of new environment under the weight of subsidies. The customer experience issues come into clearer focus, and restaurants push back against the entire model.
Yeah, I agree with that, and especially the point that you made, Jaron, that the delivery business model and the stakeholders in the delivery business providers are in shaky ground. And so, I mean, let me state the obvious. When we're talking about off-premise dining, there's only two ways that occurs. You can have it delivered to where you're going to consume it, your home or your office, or you can go pick it up. Now, this is not new. Delivery and takeout has been around forever. But the mechanisms to accomplish that are different with these third-party providers that have, popped up on the scene over the last, really half a dozen years or so. Now, we have seen a massive shift to delivery, or the attempt to shift to delivery, because in-store dining traffic has been challenged for actually quite a long time. In fact, in-store dining traffic in the casual dining sector has been negative for 10 years, just as an example. So there's been a tremendous amount of investment by the chains and the operators into the delivery channel. In many cases, thinking initially that it would be, a silver bullet of a type that offsets that chronic decay in restaurant dining customer traffic. But the issue is that delivery is, in the parlance, is the last mile business. And the last mile business is a terrible business. It's very hard. It's very expensive. It generally creates an unpleasant consumer experience in terms of it could be timing, it could be cost because you pay more. It could be food quality, et cetera. And in many cases, leaving operators without a way to correct failures, because you may not be able to actually contact the customer. And if there is any kind of a screw up, then it's the restaurant's fault, typically not the third-party delivery fault. So there's a lot to wrestle with here. And then I think the last point is that when consumers are faced with the true cost of convenience, meaning delivery, not pickup, I think that you're going to see a growing percentage of that off-premise traffic going to pickup, because consumers are going to be willing to be their own delivery driver and go get the food rather than paying a third party to deliver it sometime in the next 45 to 75 minutes with all the fees that are attached to it. So, and especially in an environment where, we have gone from 3% employment to whatever that number is going to be, 20 or 30%. They'll tell us later. And consumers being tapped out and conservative, I think that is going to push a lot more of the off-premise channel towards pickup versus third-party delivery, especially if some of these third-party delivery options disappear, because, again, none of them are making money right now. In fact, their cash burn rates are horrific in most cases. So I guess I question the reliability of a partnership with some of the delivery providers that are that exist today.
You can really see there are very clear lines between delivery and order for pickup. Let's talk about what makes order for pickup great.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing in light of the sort of economic factors that Alan was talking about is that order ahead done on mobile is the most profitable type of order that a restaurant can get. In right now, we don't have dine-in. But even when we do, dine-in ties up tables and ties up resources inside the store, whereas mobile order ahead allows for payment to be tendered by the consumer without any cost to the provider, and doesn't tie up any of those in-store resources. And if it's done right, you can have a very quick, efficient, and safe, especially contactless experience, giving restaurants more control over the entire journey, and as well as the last mile customer experience, where done right, that can itself be a really nice touch point for the consumer and for the restaurant. It also gives great data. We see restaurant chains who've taken control of their order ahead experience and get all kinds of interesting insights and trends that come out of the fact that these are fundamentally digital products on the mobile ordering side. And all of that great data can help optimize. And then it's a basis to innovate. So we think people great brands, great restaurant chains are starting to think about what they can do differently by driving higher average order volume, getting people to increase their cart size, and do other things in ways that aren't necessarily available for delivery.
Obviously, companies are wanting to know how they can maximize their current opportunities. Jaron, you've been mentioning the importance of contactless orders, which has entered our lexicon as quickly as phrases like social distancing. Can you define what restaurant operators need to be most concerned with in contactless methods today?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say that folks in the restaurant industry are completely at the very front lines of this epidemic. And for those that we work with, we just have a ton of empathy right now. And our hearts go out to the people that are on the front lines of this and really bravely fighting through and keeping establishments running to keep people fed in the middle of all this. But contactless, let's kind of break that down and talk about what we're talking about. The word obviously came from a term that had been floating around in the lexicon of people talk about contactless payment. So it used to just pretty much apply to one segment of the overall customer journey or customer experience. But now, with Order for Pickup, we have been working with some of our partners on expanding that contactless to go not only from the order process where someone is just working with their phone to kind of put the order together and place it, or with their laptop, to following procedures on premise. So there's a whole set of new guidelines which are coming out around employee glove wearing, hand washing, and ways to minimize human contact with the food through the order preparation process. Packaging, which is absolutely a key piece in all of this, and then fulfillment. And we've been working closely on evolving guidelines for contactless pickup curbside. So that would be a situation where somebody would walk it out of the restaurant establishment, perhaps scan a QR code through a window, put the order in a trunk, to designated on-premise pickup stations, which keep people 6-8 feet away from, keep employees of the establishment 6 or 8 feet away from the customers who walk in. And how do you set up your establishment in order to do that? How do you let the customer know which order is theirs when they arrive? There's a whole bunch of questions in there that people in the industry are working through, and we have been a close part of that conversation.
Makes total sense. We know speed has always been a key factor in the customer experience. Obviously, that might not hold true right now, but I'm guessing that as the future becomes more clear and everyone adapts, that we'll see this rise in importance again. Can you share the relevant learnings from the Rakuten Ready 2019 time study that you think can be useful right now?
For sure. And the landscape clearly has changed since we did the study, but a lot of the insights are valid and increasingly important as we see this growing sort of tidal wave of order ahead for pickup, which is rolling out through COVID when dine-in is not possible. What we were asking late last year was, what is the order for pickup experience really like in the real world across all of the top brands and all the leaders in the industry? So we did a close look at both the digital side and the physical pickup side of the order ahead experience. The physical side, we touched 755 locations across 25 of the top brands, which included restaurants. And we learned a ton about what the impact of wait times is on the customer experience, because we actually sent shoppers to all of these locations and measured things in a detailed way. And that helped us understand the customer impact of programs that are well run and programs that have certain sets of challenges. The customer experience typically starts with the concept of speed of service. And so we know that speed is really important. And this data comes from the millions of orders that we've processed through the Rakuten Ready system, that customers who waited less than the 2 minutes to pick up their order were 4 times more likely to order again than those that were waiting 10 minutes. So while we might not be able to hold brands to the magic mark of 2 minutes in all cases right now, at some point the industry, as it comes roaring back, is going to be competing on this dimension of delivering a fast, great experience in the order ahead world. And I think a ton of consumers who hadn't tried order ahead, who moved to it under this situation, are going to stick with it at least for many trips. Our study showed, based on the pre-COVID-19 data, that more than 3/4 of all orders came in under the targeted time benchmark. And that means that 22% did not. And the issue there is that when people use these experiences over and over again, which is it's kind of core to the concept, the success that a Starbucks has, for example, is very much wrapped up in loyalty, where a customer tries order ahead on the device, they have a good experience, they get rewarded with stars, and then they come back to that experience over and over and over again. In a world where that's the case, if 1 in 5 times that somebody orders, things don't go right, that breaks the loyalty loop and actually throws the entire program on a lower trajectory, where you have a ton of customers who are going through it, and they might have a good experience the first time or the second time, but the third time they're going to hit a bump. So I think as a whole, we in the industry need to do better. We need to push that number up and make it sort of operationally much more reliable, that people have a good experience every single time. We know that customers gravitate towards ordering from brands that can provide the best overall customer experience, and getting your order quickly, in many cases, is the core to delivering a great experience. And brands that aren't optimizing are running the risk of leaving money on the table by not satisfying customers, and because those customers may go elsewhere, and that puts your business at risk. So wait times and experience still really matter now, and as we come out of this, are going to matter even more down the road.
I agree with that 100%, and I'm going to amplify a couple of those comments, if I may, at the risk of piling on. But we know that in these times, or times like this, customers are somewhat understanding of the current experience and current issues, and they'll, at least initially, I think that they will cut some restaurants, some slack in execution, but make no mistake about it, as I mentioned before, execution is still key here. except that we're going to be adding a couple of dimensions that did not exist before. So, for example, consumers tend to be brand loyal to the brands that are dependable and reliable. And we used to think about that mostly in terms of, the menu offerings and food quality and, friendliness and speed of service, what kind of, are you greeted with smiles and things like that. But now we're going to have these new dimensions, which is the actual the physical process of pickup and takeout. And I think one of the best things to think about it and take away from this webinar is the importance of optimizing around speed. You increase speed, you decrease personal interaction, which is a critical variable in consumer purchasing pattern decisions moving forward. And if we increase speed and decrease personal interaction, we minimize contact risk and all kinds of other ancillary concerns that consumers have. And so restaurants today are in a pivotal place as they think about ways to solve and optimize their off-premise dining for takeout. They need to capitalize on the immediate opportunity that'll keep customers satisfied and safe, but at the same time minimize any kind of consumer pushback on the takeout experience, and time being a critical one. And I'm assuming that everybody that is listening to this webinar has experienced this, the occasion where you ordered ahead and they said, okay, your food's going to be ready for pickup at 6:15. And so you get in your car and you go there at 6:15 and it's not ready until 6:35. And I can tell you from my experience, and I'm sure you would share it with me, that your enthusiasm for doing that again after you've sat in your car for 20 minutes, steaming over time, over how long you have to wait, you're going to be thinking twice about whether you return to that establishment or you try something new and different.
Great insights, both for now and for the future. And while wait times and experience can help drive order for pickup success, what are the financial implications of this shift in order mix? There's another practical lesson for restaurant owners, isn't there?
Definitely. The shift to order for pickup impacts the bottom line today, and it's going to continue to have a bigger impact down the road in the future. We, Rect and Ready, did an ROI study this year where we took a look at the impact of that shift from to mobile order from pickup from in-store or traditional drive-through, and show that it can improve revenue by 20% in some cases. So the focus should be on how to nurture and maintain that shift from order to order for pickup as the industry evolves and we get into a new normal and revenue starts to bounce back. Well, and
the importance of this in the near term, meaning it's order for pickup in the next 12 to 24 months is going to be acute. It's going to be a very acute consideration because we're not going back to dining anytime soon in restaurants that are packed. We're not even sure if that's going to be allowed. Social distancing is for real, and it's probably somewhat permanent. So the restaurant chains are simply not, in my view, anytime soon going back to 100% of their dine-in run rate as measured by sales. it's going to be a fraction of that, and maybe a realistic goal is to aim for 70%. So, how do you make up the delta, for the sales that you lost? Well, I think one of the best ways is pickup, especially considering, the cost and potential issues that you have that were previously discussed on the delivery side.
Great. Let's talk through it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the data that we put together for the ROI study established that mobile order for pickup is the fastest for customers, the most profitable, as I mentioned, and provides the big opportunities to run really efficiently in back of house, more so than any other channel. So the data was pretty clear. The more orders you can shift to order ahead for pickup, whether that person's coming in the store, whether they're getting it at the curbside, or whether they're ordering it so that it's ready when they get to the drive-through window, the better the financial picture is going to be for an operator. First of all, as we're going to talk about, the faster the experience is, the more it'll change the perception of customers and create more frequent order for pickup ordering. It drives higher throughput, secondly, leading to more revenue. And third, it's more efficient, so there are no fees to worry about. It becomes your most profitable channel. Insights, those types of insights we're hoping can help restaurants right now as they think about what the next steps are going forward. As you can see, nearly half of respondents said drive-thrus were their preferred way to order. A third also believed it was the fastest way to get their food. And our study showed that order for pickup was actually on average 1.7 times faster than drive-thru. So there's a perception mismatch out there right now. And one trend that we saw before COVID-19, but now is just obviously being accelerated, is a shift in the drive-thru channel to expand contactless to the entire customer experience. The traditional model is to order, pay, and pick up from the drive-thru lane. The contactless trend, led by Chick-fil-A and Starbucks, is to push customers to order and pay from the app and then go through the drive-thru to pick up their order. Chick-fil-A is also testing a hybrid model that allows customers to order on-premise but pay by swiping themselves or using Apple Pay to speed up the process and minimize the risk of disease being spread as cash gets passed around. This is super, super compelling because it improves the contactless experience, lowers health risk, lowers wait time. At the drive-thru, it increases the throughput. So if you have one lane, or even if you have two lanes, if folks are stopping at one window to order and then making payment at a second window before they receive their food, that slows down the line for everyone. And if you can increase the throughput at peak times in drive-thru for almost anyone in QSR, that's almost like printing money because the demand is very, very elastic when the wait times are low at the drive-thru window. So, and there's labor benefits as well, and how employees are allocated to different value-add roles around the window. So, based on a study from Starbucks, the impact could be a reduction of as much as 20% in wait times. And overall, this type of contactless ordering is not only much safer for consumers, but significantly faster and more profitable. The higher throughput drives much more revenue.
Yeah, that's a good point, and obviously, drive-through is largely confined to QSR, not full service dining, so it's not even an option, other than for the fast feeders. And before before COVID, restaurants were I wouldn't say experimenting, but they were using contactless ordering, but in smaller doses. We haven't really, or I have a hard time putting my fingers on a brand that has rolled it out in a major way. Although I'm sure there are some that are well down the trail for that. But going forward, given the environment that we are in right now, contactless delivery solutions are going to be far more appealing to the chains than they were before. And not in terms of whether they work or not, but in terms of a priority as they get their arms around the wait time and revenue implications that are associated with increasing and optimizing around speed. So they have a great opportunity in front of them. They just need to best figure out how to take advantage of it. And I think that this is, the focus and priority and muscle put behind, takeout and contactless solutions is going to be one of the biggest changes we see coming out of the crisis. And not just because the chains are going to do it, but consumers are going to demand it.
So, and when you look at dine-in, as Alan's pointing out, we know it's not happening right now, but putting it in perspective relative to order for pickup, 40% chose order in person as their second most preferred method before the current situation, of course. And as with drive-through, 34% believed it was the fastest way for them to get their food, although again, there's a big divergence with reality because mobile order for pickup was actually 2.5 times faster than ordering in person.
Wow, this slide really puts it into perspective. Let's take a closer look.
Yes, here we see a stark picture of the perception issue, as only 10% chose order for pickup as their preferred method, while again, it was faster than either other option. So overall, it was perceived as the slowest way to get their food, but in reality, it was about 2 times faster than the other methods. So faster means more throughput, more revenue, fewer touch points with restaurant staff, and certainly higher profitability overall. So getting your order for pickup right at this time is critical to your business as we come out of this slump.
Wow, the speed benefit comes through front and center, really echoing what you shared from the Rakuten Ready time study earlier. Not only does a quicker experience benefit customers, but it's clear to see it actually benefits restaurants too, with increased throughput and profit, in addition to the customer loyalty. Just to be clear, can you provide more on what this means for restaurants?
For sure. Our study identified 5 best practices that top brands are focusing on as they think about the path forward. First, prioritize logistics. This is now all about accommodating contactless ordering with signage, proper social distancing, new pickup areas, new racks, etc. That also lowers wait times and has a positive impact on customer perception.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's really important to eliminate that pickup friction at the location, whether that's time, usually measured in time. And I think, Sharon, you mentioned this earlier, but one thing I do love is the priority pickup arrangements that many chains have put in place, which may not be perfectly appropriate right now if you cannot enter the establishment to pick up your food. Initially it might, the bulk of it might be delivered to your car, so true carside. But once that the dining room or lobbies are open for pickup, to have a dedicated station, and it can be as simple, as a bookcase, but it's alpha sorted, and it's you expected to pick up your food at 6:15. You pull up and park in a designated parking spot by the front door. You get out of your car, you walk in, you see the bookshelf, you see the bag with your name on it, you pick it up and you leave, and there's no interaction. You've already paid, so it eliminates that pickup friction, and that is going to be critical variable in the determination of brands that you select for off-premise dining, and again, it speaks to another way to optimize around speed.
Totally agree. The second area is training and customer service training, and it's really critical now for employees to understand how to maintain the contactless protocols and make attention to cleanliness part of the everyday thinking that's going on. The regulatory agencies, the CDC, the FDA, and others are constantly revising guidelines right now, and so making that, figuring out ways and processes to keep managers, employees updated on those changes is part of the one of the many hurdles that that operators have right now. Third, leveraging data. So using data to better understand how processes are working, where they're strong and where they're weak, to find areas of constant improvement and opportunities to grow revenue, and figuring out what else can be sold in this environment. Do we want to look at meal kits? What types of add-ons can we sell? What's the peak times? How do we allocate labor? How's that changed? All those questions can be answered through data. And then finally, promoting the message loudly and promoting it often. So making sure that customers are really clear. You have to tell people 3, 4, 5 times sometimes before it really sinks in what is being done to keep them safe, and also what's being done to keep employees safe, because those two things go hand in hand. And if the message isn't loud and clear, the brand isn't going to be top of mind, and a lot of consumers are going to move to other brands that they do feel they can trust when it comes to safety.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I would, I mean, you touched upon this, Jared, but I can't stress enough the importance of capturing that data, which is a built-in advantage for pickup and takeout versus the third-party delivery model. And every chain operator who's listening to this knows what I'm talking about. They've been in an arm wrestling match with these third-party providers over who gets the data. And the third-party providers are very reluctant to share that, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what they have. So this is an end around that frustration that operators have with third-party delivery versus takeout. But I think that it's safe to say that contactless ordering is here to stay as a relatively new idea, but it's going to be a permanent idea. And the focus and concern about hygiene and sanitation, that's going to be front and center in ways we've never considered before. I mean, for example, if you walked into a full-service restaurant in the old world, meaning 2 months ago and prior, and you saw a host or hostess wearing a mask or gloves, what would you think when you walk in that restaurant before you sit down to your nice meal? You think, God, is she sick? What's going on here? Today, you might turn around and leave if the host or hostess is not wearing a mask. So these are, part of the monitor and adapt, considerations as we work through this. But I do agree with Jaron also in communication is just super critical to put the consumer's mind at ease. And the communication isn't just verbal or email reminders and things like that. It might be, theater, like making sure that the Purell or hand sanitation dispensers are sprinkled all over. Having employees every half an hour wiping down, commonly used areas and doorknobs and things like that. So there's theater so that they can see that you're doing something different, because consumers are going to be looking for reassurance. And if they have to wonder or worry about trusting your brand, then they will go elsewhere.
Totally agree. And the final thing I'll mention is around technology and innovation. Is that brands need to look at their entire technology strategy and ensure that they can adapt to where customer expectations are moving and what is required to provide a great experience. Asking questions like, how does this play in an app experience? Are they using predictive arrival technology to shorten wait times? And how can they integrate contactless ordering into the overall technology stack? Those are really important questions that brands are looking to answer right now.
And those are good examples of best practices that brands are diving into right now. While the environment has changed so dramatically and shockingly, there will be a time where we start to return to some sort of normal behavior, which I think at this point we all crave. But we can see the wave that's coming, and these best practices are part of it, and it's absolutely critical that restaurants get prepared now for what that environment looks like very shortly.
Yeah, brands need to know that their investments will pay off. That's been clearly shown at this point, and that we're not always going to be in the current situation. But the shift to order for pickup is only going to be accelerated by what we're going through right now. And we're going to come out of it with a higher percentage of consumers that are looking to order and interact with brands this way. And so restaurants need to do what they can now to meet the needs of their customers and meet the needs of their employees as much as possible with a seamless, safe experience that's reliable and delivered the right way every time. And it's not going to be perfect out of the gate, but as we evolve this into the new normal, an investment or a focus on order for pickup, it doesn't need to be a huge financial investment, but it needs to be a focus for the business. That focus is going to be required to compete in the long run and to thrive in the world that we come out in on the other side. And smart brands that we know are making this investment, and over time, order for pickup, they know the payback is quick, and it puts them in the driver's seat with respect to competitors who have not been making that a focus.
Great, thank you. So, Jaron, how does Rakuten Ready fit into all of this?
Yeah, I mean, we're 100% focused on helping brands and restaurants drive demand and deliver the best possible order for pickup experience that they can right now, and make that transition to a digital front door that they control at the end of the day. And a couple areas that we're working on, obviously, takeout. We've launched a new initiative called Rakuten Takeout, and it's a simple self-service platform that allows local restaurants to build a custom website, allows them to capitalize on the demand for takeout orders that we can drive from Rakuten's sort of global ecosystem, millions of members in the United States that we can bring to the table. And we've made it free in this current situation until at least November, until we get through this. So for us, it was a really nice way that we felt like we could, in some small way, help establishments that are struggling under all of this. And the second is our Arrive product, which we work with a lot of brands to help them create a superior customer experience. It offers a predictive arrival technology, so you can know, say, 5 minutes or 7 minutes ahead of when that customer comes in that they're coming to start food preparation or to stage orders. It's accurate on its predictions when customers are going to arrive. Eliminates wait times, increases operational efficiency, and gives great data about how long customers are waiting, which allows operators who have multiple establishments, whether it's dozens or hundreds or thousands of locations, to really understand what the performance is across all those locations, and go in and identify training issues or what have you that give that reliable, fast experience every single time, so restaurants of any size can scale quickly and cost effectively.
So much to think about, and I know we all are eager to emerge on the other side. Thank you again for sharing all the amazing insights and best practices. And thanks so much for those of you who have sent in some questions. Let's see how many we can get to. The first one, if restaurants didn't previously have a mobile order ahead program, what should they focus on today as they build it out on the fly?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are all kinds of tools. I mean, obviously, Racked and Ready is one set of tools that can get restaurants up and running really, really quickly with mobile order ahead. But there's a whole ecosystem of technology providers that are out there that can help stand that up easily and quickly. I think a lot of restaurants in the last 5 years, let's say, have a little bit outsourced their digital growth to these third-party aggregators. And they're able to go back to their management, their board, and their shareholders and say, look, we have this increasing percentage of orders which are coming through a digital channel. But in effect, their own brand was not necessarily the front door by which that order was being placed. And so that's being exposed as a strategy that was risky. And I think if to your question, if a restaurant is just starting fresh, they need to think about looking closely at all the tools that are out there. And obviously, I hope they look at Racked and Ready that can help them create their own branded experience and direct interaction with the consumer to kind of own that digital touch point with the consumer.
Great, thank you. You mentioned delivery aggregators being in trouble. What does that mean for the future of those brands that are still standing and for restaurants?
You want me to take a crack at that?
That'd be great.
Megan? Okay. So we touched upon this before, but basically the delivery aggregators playing in that last mile arena, which is a terrible arena. And that these delivery aggregators and third-party delivery services are basically all losing money. Well, that's going to get worse before it gets better, because there is tremendous pressure, both legislative and tremendous pressure on the part of the chains and operators to reduce the overhead burden that is created with the commission or fee structure, the take rate from the aggregator. So, historically, those fees ran for the average restaurant somewhere between 15 to 30%. Well, with those rates, or at those rates, the operator is not going to make money in delivery. So there's tremendous pushback from the operators. And then on the legislative side, the folks that are on this call, know about this, but in San Francisco, they're trying to cap the rates at 15%. In New York, they're talking about capping the fee structure between, I can't remember exactly, but it's 10 or 15%. And you're going to see more and more of that. And so what does that mean? In other words, it means that whatever the path to profitability these aggregators and third parties had prior to the issues that we're in right now, that path to profitability has been extended greatly by these moves and pressure to cut the commission structures. It's going to make it even more difficult.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the fundamentals of the model where somebody places an order, another person drives to a restaurant, might have to wait for that food to be prepared, picks it up, and then takes it to the home in a point-to-point delivery. The economics are just super, super challenging, and it goes back to everything we were talking about. There's not slack in the economics of this model to be picked up anywhere.
Knowing that many restaurants, large and small, may not survive the crisis, what is your best advice in the short term to find our way through?
Alan, you want to take that? Or should I?
Sure. I'm not sure if I understand the question. What is the best advice for in the short term for the survivors, right? Well, obviously, managing the operation, let's take an individual restaurant, might be part of the chain, but an individual restaurant, managing for profitability is where you need to be focusing. A lot of restaurants are closed by mandate, but at some point they're going to reopen. But they're not going to reopen instantly at their full run rate because you're not the dining room sales are not going to snap back. I believe that they will recover, to some level. That level is probably not 100%, but the demand I think is going to return. But how you manage that when you're starting at, say, 35% of your run rate volume, and you're building to 50, and you're building to, your terminal number, which is, 70, 80, 90%, whatever that ends up being for your brand, managing the different sales channels that you have available to you in a profitable way, and is going to be the one big difference between the survivors and the casualties.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today. A big thanks to Jaron and Alan for all of that insight, and of course to our audience for joining us today. Our presenters will make themselves available to answer any questions that you wish to pose to them directly. As a reminder, today's webinar will be available on demand, and the link will be sent to you. Have a great day, everyone.